All right, so I guess I'm doing the intro too. This is the UI to code meeting for what's today, March 11th, 2023. Um, so the point that I have is that we should stop using the data prop that we're using for our components. I think we can all agree. Oh yeah, 29, sorry, March 29. Uh, But yeah, I think we can all agree that the data prop is not great for our components since it obscures what the component is expecting. And so what I wanted is that we move to using separate props. And if the prop is an object, we should use interfaces. That improves the dev experience so much. I can share my screen to show a few examples that I did. So for example, this component that I was working on yesterday, it's the agenda for the new city events for the world tour. And here you can see it expects a complex object. So if we use the data prop, we would have to go either through the template or go to the YAML file and see what we're passing to the component and how we can use it. Also with the interface, IntelliSense works much better. So if I come, for example, here, it will autocomplete whatever. Oh, just when I want to show it. Just when I want to show it, it doesn't work. It had been working, but it does autocomplete. You'll have to trust me. um, and it shows you the options that you have based on whatever you declared here in the interface. It also works great when looping through something. So for example, here I'm looping through the events in the agenda, and the items that go through the loop will also support the autocomplete. So yeah, I think it's just such an improvement. And the way we're doing it right now is we're just saying that passing the data, we're doing data and whatever comes from the YAML file. But we can do basically the same with bbind. We can spread the props, and this will make it so that every property in this object is a separate prop for the component. So we don't have to pass manually separate props. And for those pages that we already have like this set up, for example, solutions where we have this setup where just pass data like this. We can also use bbind and pass the same data. So for example, your bbind and component.data, and then for whatever component that comes in this template that uses the data prop, it will have it. And then whatever new component we create that does have separate props, it will use the prop spread. Also, we can export interfaces and share them across components. So I created this file interfaces, just have one right now because I need to use the breadcrumbs. And we can import this across components so that we don't have to declare them over and over. So it's not big changes, I think, but it can be a big improvement for us. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on this. Thanks, John. I wasn't sure where it would be best to place them, so I just placed them in the root right now. But thanks, I will move it.
I don't have any objections. I've you've talked to me a little bit about this, and I've been doing this myself, and I do find it to be an improvement. It also kind of leads to better like type checking for data files in general, so that like you can't just pass it like whatever, and it'll just be like, sure, like we'll just take that and ingest that right up, and half your templates like just fail. So yeah, I'm in favor of that change.
Actually, that's kind of an interesting point of like I like it too. As people, other teams make changes to pages, if they like change our YAML files into such a data structure that it won't render properly. Do you know how it looks when it kind of errors out or what people would see? Like I assume pipeline would fail and blank pages, that sort of thing.
Well, I think this is on build time. The errors, we would see errors. Let me share my screen again just for a moment. For example, here. Um, so where is it? I'm using an image somewhere around here. Um, here. So I'm using an image and I have already declared this in the interface. So it comes optional prop, then image, and then the source is a string. So we as devs, this mostly improves our dev experience. So if I just remove this, it will immediately know that something's wrong and let us know before we get to the point where that would be a problem. Um, I think if the content changes, we would still have to handle the error ourselves. Like have, for example, this if the speaker does not come, then don't render this. But um, it will also show this, for example, if I remove this, then it will show the warning like this might not come over here because it is declared as an optional prop here in the interface. So it will throw the warning like, be careful, they might not pass this and it will break. That's how it will help us, I think.
I, I have the next point. Um, Pretty much all of this, what I'm talking about here is just like trying to not duplicate YAML content between like a root index.yaml page and their child pages. And so that's like pretty much talking about like for some of these YAML files, they've been like in place since like essentially from dub, or we've inherited them somehow, or they've existed in processes that have existed before our team. And so what I'm suggesting is that we use like the content module to treat the content within our repository more API like. So essentially, for example, like what I'm showing in the MR that's different from what we've done before is that we're querying for all of the content of the child pages and then calling the content that we need. And so then like for instance that like for the, I'm reworking on trying to do the topics pages. And so then or the topics like header page. And so then what needs to be shown is like the actual topics pages that list out to all of the pages. And instead of having a YAML file that says like, hey, here are the existing topics pages that exist that are child pages that link out to this and that, what we would do is we would look at the content directory, look at all of the child's pages there, and then pull all of that, all of the titles and the URLs for that stuff there. Essentially, it's like not having to have stakeholders duplicate, we have content either, in the index that they have to update and then in the child pages themselves. People can just like update it once and it should update everywhere else. And then have like the code take care of like all of the views. Um, I think a lot another aspect of that is also like the stakeholders, because a lot of the stakeholders are the ones who are actually updating the YAML files and making sure that like those sorts of changes work for them and that they're like aligned that that would be helpful to them in some way so that they don't have to update multiple spots, and also keeping them in the loop that like, hey, like we're removing this, but that's because, you know, you shouldn't need to update multiple things at once anymore, yada yada. um yeah, that was just something as I was like working with that, thought could be good for us as a team to like try to be like more aware about, and like realizing that we can do that because that's something that like kind of for me personally, I started to like put so and so together that we can like use like their Nux tools in that way to help us make the site better. And so I just wanted to call that out. I put an MR that kind of shows like a pretty simple example of that I'm working through. So yeah.
There's nothing else. I'll jump in. I was wondering if Megan could just talk a bit about the blocker for moving the product form onto the marketing page. Because I wasn't quite sure the specifics of it.
Yeah, so for context, we were building like a new free trial page, and it would be ideal to have that form live on our marketing site rather than have the potential customer have to take an additional step or go to a new place to fill out a form. It's not like the best user experience. I'll share the form here. And this is the product page, and like in code, you can see where this form is. It's posting or sending data to whatever this is, their API that I assume lives in the product. It wasn't easy for me to find where this form was in the product code. There's no fancy view source button. So I didn't get a chance to look at it too closely, but just like everything else in the product, I have a feeling it's built in like Ruby or Ruby on Rails or a combination of things like that. So it's not easily like cut and paste onto our site. Just kind of glancing through this, there's like hidden fields that I assume there's some kind of logic that's like making these tokens. Like all of that was in the product, and I think for us to just like copy and paste it isn't possible. I think we have to make our own solution. Whether like I was chatting with Justin before, and even if we have something, I know this page might change, but where you enter your email here, and by clicking it, you are taken to that form, and your email or name it's filled out already. You just have to fill out the rest of it. Just like some kind of like bait. I hate to use that word, but like start filling out the form on our landing page, and it's like a seamless experience. It transfers you to the next step in the form, which might live on the product, but it was like so fast. I don't know. But for us to make a form like that, we should definitely. I think would be just a game changer to have something like that on our site. But it's going to take some time and collaboration with. I know Gail from the growth team had some interest in this, and I assume some product teams. But if we had some time to kind of scope out a project like this, man, we could achieve so much with this living on our side. But does anyone have any specific questions? I'll try to answer, but.
Javi and I were actually trying to find out a way to have more control over forms, since they are all injected by Marketo, and it injects like 20,000 lines of code, which to manage a form is kind of overkill. We tried looking for a way to get the field information and then control the form on our side, because we saw that Marketo does have like a submit method that we could use. It just expects the object. So if we can build that object, we can theoretically build our forms and control them. but we couldn't find a way to get all the info we needed to create the form just from the form ID that we get.
It's interesting. I'm not sure if Marketo has anything to do with the product form. It's like the sign up form itself. But on the topic of like making kind of like an initial form on our side that collects just initial data, I wonder if we could use Marketo for something like that. And who knows what the product API is doing? Like, is it doing something like we're pinging it with the form data to the product? Is it doing something in Salesforce? Is it doing something in some tools I'm not even aware of? And I don't think we could just make a post request to the product API from our site just for security reasons. But yeah, I wonder, that'd be pretty cool if we could use Marketo to do some kind of like middleman in between the two.
On the topic of rendering forms in Marketo, I can talk a little bit about what we ran into. So there's the Marketo API has a couple endpoints. One is for getting like the form fields that exist. So it'd be like the name, like last name, like email, get all of that stuff. Another API form that they have is just give me a Marketo form that's pre-styled that gives me, the form itself, and it'll return a DOM element with all of that information. That's what we've been using for rendering our forms. That's why we have like all of these like crazy, CSS overrides and all this shindig to try to like make it better. They don't have any other API endpoint to grab all of the data. So what we would have to do if we came up with a custom like form solution is that using that DOM node that Marketo is providing for us, we would have to like essentially scrape this DOM node for all of the data that exists in it and then render the form ourselves in our own way. We didn't think that was super great, but I feel like that's if we wanted to go that direction in having like a custom Marketo form on our site, like that's what that would take, unless there's another API endpoint that we're not aware of. But according to their docs, that was what we ran into. Things where that starts to become trouble is like in particular, like where you're talking about like location, so like country and like state. I know there's like a lot of work on their end to, keep up to date. Like we don't do like China and Russia and all that stuff. So it's like there's like some privacy stuff there, and like I don't want to, anything that's a drop down essentially. And that's I'm sure its own rabbit hole. So, but if we wanted to go that direction of rendering our own Marketo forms, like I think we technically could if we wanted to. I don't know what it would take from our side, but I think we like it's possible. I don't know how well that would work, but it could work.
You're giving Marketo a little too much credit. They're they're so bad. Yes, there is API endpoints. If you have access to like the actual dashboard, you can get auth tokens, and you can actually create custom forms that ping the stuff, but they don't have that documentation public. You have to have like a login. It's like the login version of that. So all that is possible. Like the downside, or like it needed to be like a custom form in a way that we know is not going to change. What makes Marketo really nice for certain people, it's the whole CMS aspect of it, is that when they want to add a new field, they just do it on the back end, and when they hit submit, like the DOM element's already updated. Like we don't have to do anything. So we wouldn't want to have to be in the business of like creating all these forms every single time they want to make an update or do something. We have to like update all the forms across our site. It would just be like one form that doesn't change. Maybe it is that here's your email, hit submit, and then it goes through another pipeline process. But like that might be something we could do, but totally is doable. Not a super pain in the ass. It's actually relatively okay, but that's something you need to take into account. Like we wouldn't want to build something custom. And I've done the scraping method too. Totally works, but it's actually longer. Like your page load time like increases quite a bit when you start doing all that.
I want to mention too, I don't know if it was just like a nice to have on the design itself, or we actually use this elsewhere. But just to know on the sign up form we had sign in with Google and GitHub. That would be really cool to have too, even if we have like a sign up form solution on our site, and like the second iteration on it could be adding like OAuth. I think that would be really cool for us to investigate adding to our marketing site. Not sure how gaining keys like that works, like procuring something like that for us, and how the security stuff works, but I think adding like a sign in via Google would also just be a experience enhancer.
If you go through the product side sign up, they have like Google, GitHub, Salesforce, Bitbucket, and like one or two others as well for social sign-ons. Lots of options.
How do you get to that page?
That's the tricky part. I'm not 100% sure. But if you go to just like their main sign-on, I think it's Google and GitHub. But then if you like, or like to sign up rather, then if you go to sign in later, they have like 6 options. So I don't know how you get to some of those. But I do know they're in some way available.
But as far as like the initial topic, like the form thing, where it gets tricky is like wings that we don't have a server. Like our site, there's no backend, so it can't process those forms. So whatever, if it's the current, like theoretically, if the current Rails like API that auth that post method page, if they allowed traffic from about.github, GitLab, not github.com, theoretically, like we could post to that, but they would have to modify their security parameters in Rails to allow that to happen. And then theoretically, we could just create like a basic form, post it there, and it should quote unquote work. But there's Rails has like a lot of security inherently built into it that tries to like not let that happen. And I think that's the bigger thing too.
Where'd he go? Yeah, I haven't looked at that form in ages, but I know that like depending on if we were able to use the post method to send all of that data directly to wherever GitLab's currently sending it. Like I don't know if we also collect like personally identifiable information and credit card data and being compliant and all of that sort of stuff. We don't want to own that. I mean, luckily we can't because we don't have a back end, but like it's just like layers to think about that I feel like, in theory, even if we can build it, I think there will need to be a conversation with like legal compliance, security, like the people that care about these things. Um, Sounds like a
The
lot of
question,
work.
the other question might be is kind of like Megan and when we were talking about it, like, is there a mini version of the form that's like a step 0.5? Like you fill out like 3 or 4 form fields, hit next, and then it goes to the product with that stuff already populated in, and then you continue the rest of the form field. So at least you're starting down that path, and that might be like instead of trying to get like all the information, you're just getting like, oh, you're landing on this page because you want a free trial, or you click the social link or something. Do you need to fill out everything, or is it just like Megan said, is there like a bait, or is it like a teaser to fill this out, and then you get the rest of the form and the next step that then progresses down that line?
And anytime I hit the continue with SaaS button and it takes me to the free trial sign up page, it knows my first name, last name, company. It's not in the URL, so like they're grabbing that from something. So I feel like we should be able to play off that.
Is that happening even if you go like incognito? Or is it just because you're already signed in?
Probably not. Let me see. Oh yeah, it doesn't work in incognito. But now I see the register with Google and GitHub. Completely different screen than if I'm not incognito. Sweet. Anything else from anyone?